I'm Sally Roberts, and I'm the Managing Director of Harveys Windows and Conservatories based in Leicester.
Brilliant. So, Sally, we've known each other a while now. So it's I can't remember how long, but a long enough, which is good because you'll have a good perspective on Business Pilot. You know, there's some of these videos I've been doing, people have been on a few months or a few years. So it'll be good to talk through it. Where we start in these conversations is always looking at what life was like before Business Pilot. So that's where it might be harder because you've been on it a while. You know, some of these people have literally just dived out the fire. But so I wonder if you could just sort of explain what it was like before Business Pilot, just to give us context to now.
Okay, so two main things. As you say, we've been on it now. I think we met up at the first Fit show that you were at.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
2019.
2019, so the two big things that come to mind is our scheduling board used to be literally fastened to the wall, a row of A4 sheets per fitting team. And it was a pretty good system that was designed by our original surveyor, Bill Lee, bless him, who's no longer with us. But it showed you everything, what the job was, who was fitting it, how many days it took, whether it had been surveyed, whether it had been ordered, whether it had been delivered, all on one A4 sheet. It was a really good system. So as you can imagine, we were quite loath to part with that. So in fact, the scheduling board was one of the last things we adopted. But that was a big day, big old day. And the fitters were not happy. But we've even got half the fitters on the app now. So that's been a big change. And the other thing was we had a pile of diaries in the corner of the main desk. And we used to handwrite every single lead. And then we had a to-do thing as well. Go through every day and highlight the to-dos when we'd done them. So, I mean, it just seems like... And we didn't have any purchase orders. There was no such thing as purchase orders. And I just cannot believe we operated like that.
Well, I can, because obviously I get to see a lot of it. And you were not, way behind everybody else or anything else. I remember when I started looking at, sort of pre-Business Pilot, obviously I'd gone to work alongside Cherwell Windows, which is where all of this came out of. And purchase orders would have a 0 value on just so they could be raised. And I said, well, so when the invoice comes in, how do we know if it's right? Well, what do you mean? Well, I can't compare it to a purchase order. So, and in fact, one of the early customers, through exactly that, because they were doing the same, found a £40,000 overcharge.
Wow.
We quote it, when we get on to talk about ROI, we quote that one all the time, because most of it, actually, the ROI is about time saving and so on. But actually, every so often, you get these big numbers that turn up, and that was one of them. They wouldn't have seen it without Business Pilot. So, so I always find it interesting to sort of compare and contrast with what was there before. And actually, when I talk to somebody who's only just started with Business Pilot, they've still got they were obviously driven enough to move away from it, whatever that system was. But they've still got a bit of nostalgia for, we can't actually do this in Business Pilot. And I think, you probably shouldn't be doing that, whatever it is.
Exactly.
But you don't say that, of course. Okay, so that's how things were. Obviously, you've seen a lot of new features come along since 2019. Those sorts of days, things have been rolled out and continue to roll out. What would you say is your favorite feature out of everything in Business Pilot?
Okay, just thinking off the top of my head, two main things actually: financial control of the jobs and the profitability, and customer service, in terms of when someone phones in, being able to immediately see, no matter who answers the phone, what the history is. It's taken us quite a long time, and it's a real big culture change to get everyone used to putting all the notes on. I wouldn't say we were 100% there yet. But we've had some new people in, so they've come in not knowing anything different. So they're kind of dragging the old hands with them. That's really good that when the customer phones, even if they're Smith or Patel. You know, you could get their postcode and you can identify them and get the whole history of visits and everything. And yeah, as I say, the financial control, you know, you you can drill down into each job, see all the purchase orders, as you say, what the purchase order was raised for, what we've been billed for, all the fitting costs. So you can really begin to understand where things are hemorrhaging if they are.
Yeah. And I think having just come out, which will now date this video, of course, for the future, but having done that sort of COVID cycle where work was crazy in terms of, you know, it was just falling through the door. And then now the sort of tide's gone out of that. And now we're going to start to see profitability and margin rather than just turnover and revenue. Yeah. You know, that's where I think it's it's vital that you have a system that shows you what your true margin is, what your true profitability is, because we can all get giddy on turnover and revenue. But
turnover vanity, profit sanity?
Correct. And the other, you know, cash is king, you know, again, having those controls, and we see businesses all sort of areas of that. You know, some of them really need to drive cash, some of them want to increase profit. It just depends where you are at that moment. But actually, how can you do any of those if you don't have financial control? You know, so what's really interesting out of all of these chats is half the people will come out with, if you like, a feature which is a software feature. So let's say BP mail schedule boards, it's a tangible feature. But actually half of them, and you're one of that half now, that actually that's not it. It's more like things like having it all in one place. They call the feature, you know, financial control. Well, there's loads of elements of financial control in the system in terms of features, but actually the feature is actually just having financial control. You know, and which I think is it. And I spoke to another guy, and he was saying, the biggest thing is all about what it allows him to see and do. It's the outcomes. It's not the inputs. It's the outcomes. You know, and I think it's right. You know, you
have to make sure that your input, it's the old garbage in, garbage out, isn't it?
Definitely.
So, I'm doing a lot of work at the minute about reconciling the reports, the management information reports, with the actual filtering of information. And you do have to be quite careful that you're comparing like with like. Because, you know, if you count up kind of manually the number of leads so-and-so has had this month, and then you just press the MI report, quite often they don't match. And it's just understanding why that is.
That's it. You know, it's got to be, and that's why people have to push for everything being on the system. You know, because otherwise you're storing information, but storing information isn't really what it's about. It's what that information can do for you as a business. You know, it's not just having somewhere for it to sit for the future. You know, it's like that'd be like having a dashboard in your car, but when your oil light's flashing, you're not doing anything about it. You know, it's only there to help you do something. You said about you've got some, if you like, newer people on board, and they're obviously probably using it a bit more in terms of adding all of the notes in because it's all they've known. How would you say the rest of the team sort of took to the change? You know, I'm always aware of the fact that it is a change. Any system, even if it's an improvement, is still a change.
It's taken a while to get where we are. We did it, as you say, it was throughout the COVID thing, so which in some ways gave me time to digest it, but because of lockdown and everything, we couldn't really implement it or use it for those couple of months. And then, of course, it was mayhem. So it was a question of, it was difficult to implement it while you're so busy, because to change systems when you're maxed out is tricky. But we did do a bit, you know, we did it very, very gradually, and people, but now everybody would say, how did we ever do without it? As I say, the change over to the scheduling board was a massive day.
It would be. You've just hit on it, and later on I'll probably come back over this, because I I almost focus on that change thing, which you think would be, why am I doing that? I ought to be hiding the fact that there's a change because that might put people off. But actually, I think we should be really honest about it. Any change, there's a hurdle to get over.
Yeah.
And our role should be about helping people to get over the hurdle. But actually, to pretend it doesn't exist would be stupid, because it does exist.
Oh, yeah, it does exist.
It does exist, any change. Yeah. And when we talk to people, I talk now about this dip. When people have Matt round, he does the demo and they think, oh, this is going to change our lives. This is amazing. They're on
overnight.
Top of the world. Yeah, that's it. When can we get our training in? Yeah, and that's great. But then they have a couple of months where they get the reality of change. It's not the reality of Business Pilot. It wouldn't matter what they were putting in, what they were doing. No. It's change.
It's hard work.
Yeah. Now, a few years later, they all consistently say, don't know how we'd have done it without Business Pilot. But I'm always keen to sort of say to people right at the beginning, actually, just get ready for the change bit, though.
Yeah.
Because if you're aware of it up front, then you won't become despondent when you're in the middle of it. I
think that's interesting, because you guys have obviously learned a lot in the last 4 or 5 years.
Oh, yeah.
Because you were so excited, rightly so excited about it, and it's quite interesting that you've obviously seen enough people go through I hesitate to use the word pain, but the process, that you could, to be a bit more tempered with this is obviously worth doing, but you are going to have these experiences on the journey.
I think that's how you've got to do it. We've always tried to be open and honest. In fact, that's the whole reason for doing these chats like this. Some of these chats have been like big Business Pilot fans, and they, everything's positive, and that's great. Don't get me wrong, we want those. But actually, some of them have been where they're in that early stage, and they're saying, actually, it is taking us a while to get the staff to fully on board, and it's completely unedited.
Yeah.
So because I don't want people just to see the gloss. Actually, I want them to understand that there's a journey to go on here. But if you do the journey, there's a couple of things that we promise. And one is we will be there every step of the way to support you. And having made the journey, it is worth it.
Definitely.
But we're not going to hide and pretend there's no journey, because there is. There definitely is.
If there isn't, you probably haven't, or you definitely haven't implemented it to its full capacity.
Correct.
You'd imagine there's people out there just kind of tinkering with the edges and maybe raising purchase orders. I would say we're still only probably at 85% of the way into it, after whatever 5 years. So it's
well, we get a real mix, and I'll ask a question at the end which will feed back to this. Some people dive in both feet first, insist that all the old systems are just dropped, and then others just take it on bit by bit and so on. And my advice actually is the latter. It's exciting when somebody just goes in full steam ahead. But actually, my advice typically is just take it on, sort out your biggest problem first.
Yeah.
Then your next biggest problem will appear. So sort that one and so on,
But definitely.
I'm getting ahead of my bullet point list. I like these to be informal chats, but I do have a little bit of a process to them. So
you've got to.
Just to keep me on track. So I suppose we're talking about after you've got it on board, and and how could we live without it now, as it were. Have you got specific things where you would say it's actually helped you to be a lot more efficient?
Oh, crikey, yeah. Purchase orders, big one in terms of, again, going back to the finances as a job, but also when you get to snagging, especially on the big build jobs, you can really begin to pin down on a big build or a big orangery or whatever. We tend to go back after the glazing, after the second fixes, for a snagging visit with the installations manager and the original designer. And we create a snagging list, and we raise purchase orders for any bits and pieces that are needed, which again really shows you what the true cost of the job has been.
Yeah.
But then, to get your final payment in, because this is a staged payment project, it just speeds things up because you can see what's been ordered and setting the tasks and the prompts to, right, this is all due in by this date, phone the customer, get it booked in, instead of it dragging on and on. So I suppose it's, in terms of efficiency, it's the whole project management side of it. If you use the tasks, and that's been a thing that we've been a little bit slow to adopt, setting other people tasks and things. That really keeps the ball rolling.
Yeah. I mean, the status progression and pipelines, to me, it's something, funny enough, we'd spoken about it at that same Fit Show in 2019 as an idea we wanted to bring, but there's no way we could have launched it then. I mean, it was a huge piece of development, but now we've got it. You start coupling it with all these other areas, and the way it can just send out automated emails for you that are templates, which might have an invoice template attached to the templated email and so on. I think that is phenomenal for time saving.
Yeah, absolutely.
And just things like, registering your jobs, so the sensor integration, just taking, what was a job and making it almost not a job.
It's just one click and you're there, aren't you?
Yeah. For those on Zero, that sort of Zero integration, they're just all speeding things up.
Yeah.
And that then leads on to the sort of ROI question. For me, there's a few things that are, personally and as a company are important to me and to us. First of all, that we are genuinely supporting installers, and secondly, that the license fee, as it were, the subscription, creates return on investment. It's massive to us that anybody, regardless of number of users, and you can imagine some of them are, with a lot of users are paying a hell of a lot of money, or whether you're 3 or 4 people, it doesn't matter. At whatever level, we want to make sure there's return on investment. So in terms of that, I wonder if you've got examples where you could say, actually, this is where we see the return on investment. I
mean, I think initially, as we've talked about, the getting it up and running and getting it on board, you've got that hurdle to get over, and you might be running 2 systems in parallel just to sense check. But very quickly, and over the years, as our confidence and knowledge has grown, we drop the old systems much more quickly, and we've dropped them all now. So I suppose, as you say, time, once you've adopted a system and got it up and running, there's always a time saving, just because of the way the whole thing's structured. I mean, we can't really say we've saved any jobs or anything, because we've grown over the same period of time, so we've actually got a bigger team. But and again, come back to it, the financial control, as you said, looking at invoices, you put a figure on with the purchase order when it's raised, and the girl that enters the invoices is just told to query anything that doesn't match within, and that's chuffed. So,
and the good news there is that obviously creates an alert. If you've set them up, you can have that. So if the invoice doesn't match the purchase order within a tolerance, then it can't go on, as in it's got to be queried, so we can't just 5:30 on a Friday night just put it on anyway just because I need to get out the door. I've set my tolerance, and the tolerance doesn't care whether it's 3 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon or whether it's 5:30 on a Friday night. It's so that's good. I also spoke a lot about the sort of team, and now I don't just want it to be a bit of software. I know obviously with training days and subsequent visits at Fit Show and probably phone calls in for support and so on. How have you found the team at Business Pilot?
Oh, they're really, I mean, I'm tending to use the, now my role in our setup has changed. I'm now looking at the next generation of how we start to use all the reports and things. So I'm using the chat button quite a lot. I think Katie, it's Sally again. Very responsive. Very, I always get a response really quickly, and she's done this or set this up. Obviously I've known you all quite a long time now, so very pleasant.
Yeah.
But easy to chat to. You don't, you feel like you can ask. I mean, there's no such thing as a stupid question if you don't know the answer, I suppose. But
Yeah.
I feel like I can ask anything, even having been using it this long. So, but actually, I never really knew that, because there's so much to it. You can easily just miss a little widget that you didn't even realise was there.
Loads. I mean, at the recent training day, obviously missed you personally, but spoke to your guys at it. Everybody was saying, we've been using it for so long, and yet we never even use this bit. And I said, well, don't beat yourself up. There is so much to it. I think there's very few people. In fact, I don't think we've got anybody who uses everything.
No,
it's just too big.
But you can pick and choose and take what suits your business.
Yeah, to me, the only sad part would be if somebody is doing something the hard way because they don't know there's an easy way in Business Pilot. Just them not using it. It might be that they just don't have a need for it. And stock control is probably the classic there. Some people have really gone full speed with stock control. Others never did have a stock control system. So it's not like they're using a really difficult stock control and they didn't realize they could do it inside Business Pilot. They just never had one anyway. So don't make your life harder just because we've got something in there you can use.
That's it. If you don't need to control your stock, don't start now.
No. So okay, that's good. So finally, a question I ask everybody. So we're talking to somebody now who has just signed up to Business Pilot. So we're not trying to convince them. They've just signed up and they're about to go on the journey. What would your advice to them be?
I would say make one person responsible for the implementation and make sure they understand exactly which bit they're trying to implement, and really give them the time to understand it themselves, and then go around and train people in properly. You can't just chuck it at your team and expect it to stick, especially if they're busy doing their own day jobs anyway. So it is all about really managing your implementation plan in terms of who's going to do it and how you're going to do it and when are you going to do it, when are you going to make the time. Because it can be very upsetting, disappointing if you think it's all brilliant as a person and then it just doesn't stick, and then the team get frustrated with it because it's just getting in the way. I think in order for yourself and the team to absorb it, you've really got to manage it and not expect it to just happen.
I think that's key, and we even have a name for those people. We call it a Business Pilot ambassador. Having one person. And I think it's not just for the implementation, throughout the whole time. I asked the question about getting in touch with the team to somebody earlier, and they said, well, actually, we don't really do that because we've got so-and-so inside the company. He's like our main point person for Business Pilot. And I said, well, actually, internally, we call them Business Pilot ambassadors. And we really recommend it because you've got like the little button that you spoke about, the live chat. You could go up and get the phone number or email. There's loads of ways to get in touch, but actually you can't be having somebody who's physically in your office.
That's it.
So because they're going to encourage the use of it. It's not that they necessarily know more than our support guys or training guys. It's not about that. It's making sure it's used. Absolutely. So that's really good. And in terms of my bullet points that I go through, as it were, that's it. I always just then say, is there anything that you think we've not covered, because Business Pilot almost as well as I do, so is there anything that we've not covered that we ought to mention, but if not, I mean, that I'm good.
Nothing immediately springs to mind. I mean, I'd just say I think my husband's in the TV industry, and looks like his role is changing a little bit because their company's really growing. And I'm saying, you need a CRM, and I think for the glazing industry, which possibly isn't the most forward thinking or IT savvy in the world, to have a thing like Business Pilot it's cutting edge. It really is. I think it's really a point of difference for those companies that have got it.
Good. We like to think so, but as I said in a previous one, we focus on just making it better, and then let other people do the shouting, because we want to focus on deserving that praise, or whatever you want to call it, So I really appreciate your time as always. It's always good to see you, and that's it.
Good.
Thank you
Very much.